Hi everyone, good evening. As we speak, G20 guests will start arriving at the Rashtrapati Bhavan for the official dinner being hosted by President Murmu. But many will say the dessert has already been served even before the dinner starts. It's called the Delhi Declaration. It was looking very difficult given that there was Russia and China on one side and the Americans and the European Union on the other side on the Ukraine war. But after much negotiations, there has been a communique that is unanimous. Now, this is a major win for India and its G20 presidency. The Prime Minister has called it historic. Two more historic happenings at this G20. Let me quickly list them out for you. The African Union is now a permanent member of the G20, which means that G20 officially is now G21. And there has been a major announcement on India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Europe economic corridor as well.
एक खुशखबरी मिली है हमारी टीम्स के हार्डवर्क से और आप सभी के सहयोग से नई दिल्ली G20 लीडर समिट डिक्लेरेशन पर सहमति बनी है। मैं इस डिक्लेरेशन को एडॉप्ट करने की घोषणा करता हूं।
The ongoing conflict, the strong views about it, considerable time was spent, especially in the last few days, in regard to geopolitical issues, which really centered around the war in Ukraine. The question who helped, I mean, eventually everybody helped because everybody came together for the consensus. But I think if Sherpa would bear me out, I think the emerging markets took a particular lead on this, and many of us have a strong history of working together. Bear in mind that actually you have 4 developing countries in succession as G20 presidency: Indonesia, us, Brazil, and South Africa. So, but I would say rather than who helped, the point to be recognized is that a common landing point was ultimately fashioned out.
Now, while the Delhi Declaration in itself is path-breaking, the launch of an economic corridor connecting 3 superpower regions is also grabbing headlines this evening. India, the Middle East and the European Union have formed a partnership to launch a trade corridor which will rival China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, under this initiative, the 3 regions will be linked by data, railways, ports, electricity networks, and it is expected to speed up trade in these regions. The chief of the European Union is calling this partnership nothing short of historic. US President Joe Biden, too, is hailing this initiative, calling it a big deal. Now, once it gets to work, the corridor will be a strong response to China's BRI project, which allows Beijing to extend its influence and investments in Europe, in Africa, and Latin America as well. Now, also on the sidelines of the G20 was another major announcement. But before that, listen in to who said what on this new economic corridor that has been announced.
आने वाले समय में यह भारत, पश्चिम एशिया और यूरोप के बीच इकोनॉमिक इंटीग्रेशन का प्रभावी माध्यम होगा। यह पूरे विश्व में कनेक्टिविटी और विकास को सस्टेनेबल दिशा प्रदान करेगा। मजबूत कनेक्टिविटी और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मानव सभ्यता के विकास का मूल आधार है। भारत ने अपनी विकास यात्रा में इस विषय को सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता दी है.
And today I'm proud to announce that we've finalized a historic agreement for a new India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. As a key part of this corridor, we're going to invest in ships and rail that extends from India all the way to Europe, connected by the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel, contributing to a more stable, more prosperous, and integrated Middle East. And I want to thank the sponsors. And I particularly want to thank Prime Minister Modi and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman.
In conclusion, I'd like to commend the PGII launched by President Biden with the participation of Saudi Arabia in $20 billion. We look forward to the integration of the initiative and the Economic Corridor project, which is announced in this meeting. I would like to thank those who worked with us to reach this founding step to establish this important economic corridor. My best regard to you all.
Now, on the sidelines of the G20, India also announced the launch of a global biofuel alliance to boost the use of cleaner fuels. Now, this alliance would help accelerate global efforts to meet the net zero emission targets that have been set. This by facilitating trade in biofuels derived from sources including plant and animal waste. Prime Minister Modi announced the launch of the Global Biofuel Alliance a short while ago and urged G20 nations to join the initiative with a plea to take ethanol blending with petrol globally to 20%. He also said energy transition is a significant need of the 21st century, considering the climate change challenge, which is here and very real. Now, the Global Biofuel Alliance, which has India, the United States, and Brazil as its founding members, have been working in the field of fuel blending. Let me go across to my guests who are joining me this evening. We have Dr. Swasti Rao, who's an Associate Fellow at the Manohar Parrikar IDSA. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for joining us. Manju Seth is a former ambassador joining us on the broadcast. And Dr. Jitendra Nath Mishra is a former ambassador, also Professor of Diplomatic Practice at the Jindal School of International Affairs. He's joining us on the broadcast as well. Manju Seth, let me come to you and start with you. Till yesterday, there was a big question on whether there will be a Delhi declaration. We knew it was looking tough, given the fact that you had America and the European Union on one side, and you had the Chinese and the Russians on the other side as far as the Ukraine war is concerned. Lo and behold, we do have a declaration, and it, I believe, had 100% consensus backing it. Will that be the big victory for India and its presidency?
For whom is that? For me?
Yes,
for whom is that question?
That was for you.
All right. Yes, it is a big win, I should say, for India's presidency, and we were able to find this via media. Though till last night, it seemed that it may or may not happen. Though everybody was optimistic, there was also a small element of pessimism, should I say, that whether it would go through or not. But I think India's, and I think also the Joe Biden meeting with our Prime Minister was also, I think, partly instrumental, because if the US and India were on the same page, I think it would be, it adds to the possibility of finding a solution. And I think that may have happened. And then the revised draft was acceptable to everyone. And India was able to negotiate the best deal, and because it was very important to have a Delhi declaration. Otherwise, without that, it would have been a dampener, should I say, on the whole presidency. But I think both, all the Russians also were not represented by their president, but he had the full mandate. And we have a very old relationship, a very strong relationship with Russia. And they have stood by us, and we had to take them on board for this. And I think our diplomats, our negotiators were able to find that correct statement and which was acceptable to all sides. And with that, we have seen the result today that the Delhi Declaration was unanimously adopted. And it was a big win for all concerned, but of course for India's presidency. Shreya.
Okay, as we speak, Ms. Seth, we are getting pictures that are coming to us from the Bharat Mandapam again. This is the big dinner, the big official dinner being hosted by the President of India. So there you have it, one by one. There's President Murmu in a lovely sari. You have the Prime Minister of the country, Narendra Modi, the man who's played a very good host over the last 24 hours, and there are 24 hours to go as well, because you know, there are a lot of bilaterals that are lined up tomorrow as well. So one by one, you're seeing cavalcades of world leaders come to the Bharat Mandapam for this official dinner, and that absolutely lovely Nataraj you know, statue, bronze statue that has come all the way from Tamil Nadu, which actually is the visual for the G20 and India's presidency. Let me quickly come across to Mr. Jitendra Misra as well. Mr. Jitendra Misra, we've spoken about the Delhi Declaration. The fact that we have one in itself is a big achievement, given how divided the world is as we speak. For you, apart from the Ukraine mention, apart from, you know, the fact that we did manage to mention Ukraine without upsetting the Russians, what else is the big takeaway for you here?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me on your show, Shreya ji. The big takeaway undoubtedly is the declaration, because there were four possibilities. One is the good declaration, which is what happened. One is a declaration with asterisks, caveats, particularly on paragraphs 32 and 33, which is what happened in Jaipur, saying that Russia and China had objections to mention of Ukraine because geopolitical issues are not supposed to be in the G20. That didn't happen. The third one is two separate statements. One is a declaration on 90% of the agreed issues, and the other is a chair statement on the 10%, which is Ukraine. And lastly, nothing, just a chair statement. So we had the best outcome. Now, why did we have the best outcome? We have discussed all this. It's all in the media, but I will add just a few other points. It's just speculation. It's just analysis, not speculation. I think President Biden, the United States, played a gentle guiding hand, helping hand, not guiding hand, but a gentle helping hand, apart from, of course, Brazil, Indonesia, and South Africa, the big emerging economies. Now, remember that we just had the BRIC summit, where Brazil, like India, was uncomfortable with expansion. South Africa went along. Now, so there is a changing structure in the international system towards bipolarity. I think bipolarity has happened in many ways, the United States and China. Now, China did not show up for many reasons. We just talk about the border issue and the map. That's important, but equally important is the issues at the multilateral level. They wanted to show solidarity, Xi Jinping, with Putin, who was not coming for his own reasons. We blame China all the time, but let's also remember that Putin might be going to the BRI summit, most probably next month. So he could have come here. He was not under the International Criminal Court sanctions and with an arrest warrant in Delhi. He was in South Africa.
It would be embarrassing for him to come. You know, they are long-standing friends, and one would have hoped that Russia, given that this is India's presidency, that they would show up, right? Bete ke ghar mein shaadi hoti hai, all friends and family are expected to show up. But I'm just thinking to myself, maybe it would have been very embarrassing for him to be in the same room as Biden and the European Union.
Well, he was also helping India in a way at a very awkward moment, and that's what true friends do. They pay the short-term sacrifice for the long-term good of the relationship. You are right. But in diplomacy, you do show up, you do shake hands, you can fight your diplomatic battles, but you are always civil and pleasant, regardless of the state of the relationship. But China, you know, China is also deeply uncomfortable about one thing that people don't talk about. That is public debt of the LDCs. You know, according to the former World Bank president, $62 billion is the public debt of the LDCs currently. And nothing really is going to be done about it because the developed countries are not interested. But China is also not interested. We don't talk about China because 2/3 of that bad debt is Chinese debt because of BRI and very bad debt. Now, China is not just a spoiler, it's actually a problem in the G20 as far as the North-South divide is concerned. And the only country that has good credentials, in my opinion, to lead the South is India. Certainly not China, certainly not Russia, because they were on the other side of the ideological divide anyway. India was in the middle during the non-alignment days also. So this is a continuation of that tradition. And China is not of the South anymore. $17 trillion is your economy and your GDP per capita is 15,000 plus million. You are middle income. What are you talking about? You have zero credentials to be called the leader of the global South, even the voice of the global South. It's bogus. And the only country that can be the voice of the global South legitimately today is India.
And I think what has emerged from this G20 as well, and the success of this G20 as well. Dr. Swasti Rao, come in here. Before we move on to other things, before we move on to this historic corridor between India, the UAE, European Union, etc., I want your view on how this Delhi Declaration was achieved. It was a tightrope walk. We know there have been long midnight hours that have been spent drafting this 83-point declaration. There was very little hope and a lot of pessimism about whether it would be signed as or not. But as we look at these pictures, everyone happily coming in, smiling, it seems all's well that ends well.
Absolutely, Shreya. First of all, a very good evening to you and to other guests. And indeed, what a day it's been, And I have been trying to put together my thoughts because there's absolutely so much excitement in all the strategic fraternity and community in trying to make sense. And we've been talking almost all day. But what I've done for you here, Shreya, is that I've tried to, this is the way I've been trying to put this. And I think it makes a lot of sense, which is that India has truly written a new ABCD, with this historic G20 presidency. And give me a moment to explain to you how. The first thing is, with the A is definitely the African Union coming and making it the G21. This is a shining example of India's commitment to Global South. And as Ambassador was just putting it before me, that India truly has emerged as a committed, a leader and champion and somebody that identifies with it and delivers on that promise. So that A, for African Union coming in and making it G21, well done, India. B, definitely for the big Biofuel Alliance. And this Biofuel Alliance is going to be extremely important. We are there with Brazil and America. America and Brazil are big producers of maize. That is from where ethanol comes from. For India, it is sugarcane. And then we intend to, now notch it up beyond 20% in our petrol, mix. And that is going to be a game changer. And this particular B of the Biofuel Alliance becomes, even better when we look at it in terms of the kind of jobs it is going to generate later on. The big C out there of the ABC now is the connectivity that you asked me to speak about. And this is absolutely a game changer. We did not have this kind of a program earlier, with the Europeans on board, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, and connecting through rail, through shipping. And this is going to be a massive game changer. I'm sure you have heard the European Union representatives say the same, President Biden say the same. And this particular connectivity, that has come up, it becomes all the more attractive because of another C out there, which is China, which chose not to attend. And I think it has served Xi Jinping absolutely correct, because this is a viable alternative to its BRI tentacles with which it tries to dominate and, economically coerce the rest of the world. So that was the C. And the D is definitely the big Delhi Declaration, because yes, the G20 has done it. Prime Minister Modi has done it. Despite deep divisions within the membership, a consensus has been reached. And this has not also important that this has not come at the final hour either. All the other previous ministerial level G20 summits this year, we could not come up with a consensus. And just on the first day of the summit itself, we have what is called the Delhi declaration. In many ways, this D also for me signifies what you just said is like the dessert that has been served. Of course, it is a big moment, and of course, we are all very happy. And if you put this ABCD together, the major key takeaways for me, and this is definitely a shining and a very satisfying, moment of India's truly global intersectional moment. And just to add to all of this, as a, as an additive out there would be the important bilateral, of course, that we have with the US. Like I said yesterday, that this is something that is going to really shape the contours of India's geopolitical, digital, geo-economic capabilities for the time to come. So if you put all of this together, this is definitely a win-win. And I think towards the end of the day, this was the news that we were all waiting for. We feel as if it's, we feel rejuvenated with the Delhi Declaration in place and with everything else working, so well too. So for me, yes, it's a great ABCD, the new ABCD that India has given.
Actually, that's a very good way to put it. I'm glad you put it the way you put it, because it really is, diplomatic language can be extremely complicated. And I'm glad you broke this down so simply for all our viewers. The three big takeaways of the G20 summit. There are still bilaterals that are lined up for tomorrow. In all, there are 15 bilaterals that the Prime Minister will have in a span of 48 hours. For the moment, of course, the big dinner just about getting underway. All international delegates, guests, walking into the Bharat Mandapam, looking absolutely stunning. You have Prime Minister Narendra Modi on your screens. You have the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, on your screens. She, ladies and gentlemen, is the official host of this evening. Manju Seth, as we continue to see these pictures, the new infrastructure initiative between India, the Middle East and the European Union is being referred to many as the modern-day spice route, a rival / a counter to the China's Belt and Road Initiative. Is that how we look at it as well?
I think partly true, but partly also it's an initiative to also to ensure free movement, easy movement of goods. Because, China has been a little threatening in the South China Sea, in the Indian Ocean, and it's taking over all these ports in different countries. So there is some threat perception that the free lines, the sea lines of communication could be impacted. This is to counter that as well. And so if you can call it a Silk Route, yes, why not? The new Silk Route via Europe to the US. And via the Middle East. So I think it is a very good initiative, and the fact that everybody's come on board, and including the European Union, it's an excellent achievement again. If you recall, when the Prime Minister had gone to Greece as well, there was talk of the, separate port development in Greece also to ensure freedom of movement in that area, in the Mediterranean region, and going up to Europe and beyond. So I think all these initiatives are very important, and whether you want to counter China or don't want to, it's a standalone thing. I think we should look at it more from a standalone initiative, and for mutual benefit of all the parties involved. I think everybody's interest is served, and whether you want to call it a new Silk Route or counter to PRI, that's a separate issue. But I look at it as being one in the interest of all the parties involved in this, and to ensure that there is free movement. And there's also talk of a digital, connectivity along that route. So I think it'll be a game changer, definitely, once the funding comes and once it is implemented. Shreya.
Okay. I do have to take a very quick break, but this new economic corridor is something that I want to talk a little bit more about, both with Swasti and with the good professor who is with us here on the broadcast. For the moment, I do have to slip into a quick break. I'll be back in exactly a minute. Do stay with us.
In association with Amul, Be More Milk.
Starting a new chapter can be the most thrilling thing in the world. How far we take an idea is a matter of imagination, because progress is a matter of character.
Shame on him.
डार्विन कहता है कि इंसान पहले बंदर था और वो जिग्नेश कहता है पूरे साल का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम अब महीने के महीने भर सकते हैं बंदर कहीं का
मानना मुश्किल भरना आसान
हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस प्रीमियम हुआ एनुअल से मंथली ऑन फोन पे स्टार्टिंग एट ₹636 per month
फोन पे सच्ची में
Milk. It's honest, natural, pure, comforting, authentic, refreshing, and blends in like no other. A lot like us, no? Same pinch. Could it be the tiniest reminder, maybe, each time we savor it, to be more like it? Spreaders of goodness, that is. Just like milk. Can each one of us be more milk? We invite the world to do more good. Be more milk.
Face the light with pride. Blender's Pride Glassware. My life, my pride.
Welcome back. Quickly going across once again two pictures that are coming to us from the Bharat Mandapam. Just look at how beautiful this looks. Actually, Delhi's been looking great these last couple of weeks as well. I think all of us can agree to that. As we take a look at these pictures, I can tell you that guests have already started arriving for the President of India's official dinner for the G20 delegates. You have the Prime Minister in attendance as well, greeting and welcoming all his guests as well, along, of course, with the President of India. The welcoming ceremony itself should take about 40 minutes. Dr. Nath, I'm assuming? Dr. Mishra, thank you very much. Apologies for that. I'm just assuming it will take about 40 minutes given the number of delegates who are there. So the dinner should get underway by 8 o'clock. And we'll keep getting pictures till then. I quickly wanted to touch upon the entire economic corridor issue that has been announced today. It's been called the big deal by President Joe Biden. We understand why it's a big deal. Here's the thing, you know, despite his extreme right-wing image, the Prime Minister has spent a considerable amount of time and energy investing in ties in the Middle East. And I think we are seeing the result of that today.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is also the I2U2. So you have to see the connection between I2U2 and this corridor. Now, this corridor is not just about China. It's also about Pakistan from India's point of view. Very important.
Correct.
And also about Iran to some extent, because Iran has made that huge deal with China, where India seemed to have been bypassed because of the Chabahar project going slow. There were US sanctions and other factors. Now, we don't have to see it as USA versus China and others joining the US or China. India has its own interests civilizationally. We have deep connections with Europe. Please don't forget that the Europeans are also looking for other partners other than the United States and China. So this is a very careful balancing where an Indian-led sort of, well, it's unveiled in India, therefore it's Indian-led to some extent. India, US, Saudi Arabia, UAE-led initiative being unveiled in India is symbolically a huge deal because India becomes a primary and important and perhaps the pivotal stakeholder in that. So the Europeans will be delighted because who is so comfortable with the rise of a new power in the international system that usually destabilizes the system and it leads to conflict and breakdown of the existing structures. And China is really going very fast in that direction of trying to destabilize and create a new international order that is dominated by China. They've already said it, compete with the US. So I see it in totality as part of that. And the G20, now China didn't show up at that level. They did show up. And I think they cooperated at the end because they would have looked bad. If they're not cooperated, they would have looked the spoilers. And Jake O'Sullivan said, I hope China is not going to be the spoiler. And that was brilliant preemptive diplomacy on the part of the US, and the Chinese were cornered. I think they were I spoke about the debt, public debt also. So we need to call out China and tell the world for what it actually is. And I think we have done that without appearing to be confrontational. We have done it in a very systematic, subtle, and a very Chanakyan way.
is then India's win the projection that we have the ability to take everyone along? We've managed to do that with this Delhi Declaration.
You're asking me, Shreya, is that?
Yes, Swasti. Dr. Swasti Rao, that was for you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So absolutely. Yes, of course, this is something that was expected from India, of course, because of India's unique position and unique relationship with the East and the West and the North and the South. This was always expected. But, you know, what had happened was because in the other proceedings, and especially at the foreign ministers meeting and then the finance ministers meeting, since we could not reach a consensus, so therefore, the doubts had started to come about whether India can come up with this kind of a declaration. Of course, that India has proven everybody wrong. And I think this is definitely something I've already talked about it, so I won't repeat myself. Now, as far as taking everybody together is concerned, I think in foreign policy, we all understand that there will be differences and no two countries will have identical foreign policy imperatives, okay, or desiderata. This is common sense. What you do through diplomacy is that you try to find as many convergences as possible. What you see India doing today and getting that success that India is getting is also coming from the fact that, you know, today all these parties see a very solid quid pro quo. You know, they see something which is a convergence of national interest. And this is the reason why, you know, India is having this leverage, okay, because India is being able to sort of, you know, translate this unique geopolitical moment, its geographical location and everything to the hilt. So I think in that sense, it definitely is a big win. There is a trust factor. And the other thing that I would like to add to the connectivity project, you know, that has just been announced is that one is that more European powers will definitely join. If I'm not wrong, I think Greece has already shown interest in being included in this mega project. So I think this is just going to grow bigger. That's one. We will keep hearing more on it. So this is going to grow bigger. That's one. The other thing that I wanted to, you know, to highlight through the connectivity project is that, you know, what is happening. If you look at the G7 idea, everybody understands there's been so much talk, Shreya, about how there is so much economic dependence on China. The decoupling rhetoric is not going to work. What the countries are actually doing is that the countries are trying to de-risk their economic dependence from China, and they're trying to look for a China plus one strategy. You know, what you just saw happening here being announced in Delhi in terms of this new connectivity project is this very good example of this China plus one, where the supply chains, the supply routes, all of these are being done with countries that have the trust factor intact. Okay, so that is one key takeaway of the connectivity project. The other key takeaway of the connectivity project is a reiteration that the global economic order is going to remain and become actually more multipolar, and then therefore you have you know, powers like the European Union and other European you know, countries, India and other middle order powers like the Saudi Arabia and UAE to push for that kind of a multipolarity in the global economic order. You know, America understands that really well, and America is doing that by more friend shoring. And what you see here is also an example of the American friend shoring, that you try to push your you know, supply chains and trade routes with countries with whom you have a trust factor. So all these contours are really emerging right now. Let's keep an eye on the space, and we will see a lot more coming in you know, coming months. Shreya.
Dr. Mishra, you mentioned something interesting, and I just want to take that forward as well. You said that India wasn't exactly keen to have the African Union as part of the G20? You didn't say that. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I never said that.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Yeah, I just wanted to counter that to say that it was.
It's delightful because the Prime Minister, I would say this is Chanakyan diplomacy. His instincts are so sharp. When he was in Johannesburg, you know, it was a Shubh Muhurtam for India. Chandrayaan 3 lands on the surface of the moon, soft lands. Just when he's in the middle of BRICS, and BRICS is expanding, everyone is saying it's a victory for China that BRICS is expanding because India is reluctant, and so is Brazil. And South Africa is, of course, working with China on that. So you have Chandrayaan 3. What does the Prime Minister say? ये केवल भारत के लिए नहीं, ये सारे विश्व के लिए है, और Global South के लिए है. And he launches the initiative, the BRICS Space Consortium, right? Now, that's very smart diplomacy. outer space diplomacy. He's giving multiple messages. Now here, India is an example of a Vishwa Guru because in one area, we have a leading capacity. We were the first in the world to land there. So we are the leaders of the world. Sure. We, even beyond the United States, though we are far behind otherwise in outer space. So looking at that, I would certainly welcome that, the African Union being there. And as I said, India is the natural partner and voice of the global South. China never was and shall not be. I don't think will ever be a true champion of the global South. China is a champion of China.
Dr. Manju Seth, we are seeing these pictures come in. As I said, Delhi looking beautiful this evening, and the weather, thankfully, has been pretty decent as well. There was a bit of rain, so temperatures have cooled down, which is good. Indra Devta, well, it has been kind on Delhi today at least. Otherwise, it's been terribly hot and humid this entire month, the weather holding out today. But, you know, there will be in all 15 bilaterals the Prime Minister does. The most important one has already happened last evening with the United States of America. And of course, you know, there has been talk about the deals that have been signed, what has been the progress on the drone deal, what has been the progress on nuclear reactors, what has been the progress on the jet engine deal, etc. But would you say that the United States of America has been a good friend to India during its G20 presidency? I say this because, you know, we have been long-standing friends with the Russians. Fact is, for whatever reasons, Mr. Putin didn't show up. Then Xi Jinping decides not to come. That was being seen as a bit of a dampener as well. And then, of course, Jill Biden gets tested for COVID. So there's a bit of a scare that President Biden may not be able to make it either. But he does make it. He's 80 years old. He takes that long flight, he lands in Delhi, and straight up goes to meet the Prime Minister for the bilateral and the dinner.
Absolutely. If you recall, when PM Modi was in the US, he made a statement that US and India friendship is the defining friendship of this century. So I think that was an important statement, and he's continuing with that because they see that interest of the US and India are converging. They are converging interests. And I think that is an add-on. And he has been, the friendship that they have shown and the support that they have shown to India, I think we must appreciate it. And it is something which earlier we wouldn't have imagined, but they understood our position on the Ukraine war, our stand on the Ukraine war, and they've commended and US and President Biden has commended the G20 presidency and the Prime Minister for leading the whole initiative and the whole, the whole year-long meetings, etc., and the final outcome. I think this is something which our relationship with Russia has not impacted our relationship with the US, and they understand that India needs both. They cannot just decouple with Russia just like that, and neither can. And we understand that China and the US economy are also so integrated that they also cannot decouple immediately. So that is that mutual understanding, but mutual benefit is seen in this relationship, including India is seen as an important partner in the Quad initiative, and now even in this corridor, as you can see, the connectivity corridor to the US. All these are in our mutual interest. And as some of our other panelists in another panel discussion mentioned, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, but only permanent interests. So I think that is an important element. And of course, at this point of time, our interests are converging, and we recognize that we need to recognize the importance of this partnership. And it's for the global good also, I believe. Shreya.
Okay, Manju said we'll leave it there. I believe you do have to leave. So thank you very much for joining us on the show. I'll ask my other guests to stay on, please. Thank you. thanks for being with us here on Mirror Now on what is a very important day for India's diplomacy and a good day for India's diplomacy as well. I'm slipping into a quick break on the show, but we'll continue to be with these pictures that are coming to us from the Bharat Mandapam in the national capital, where the President of India and the Prime Minister of India are welcoming guests for the state dinner. And it's just so heartening, you know, as I slip into a break to see that the first ladies of many countries have made an effort to don traditional Indian attire. There you have another First Lady in a sari, and I think I've spotted at least a couple of them. So that's a nice gesture as well by the guests. Slipping into a break, we'll, as I said, continue to be with these pictures. Do stay with us.